before Dracula put on his cape, before Hollywood turned blood drinking into a tragic love affair, before vampires were brooding heartthrobs with six-packs and sad playlists. There were others. Older, stranger, hungrier. They didn't charm their victims, they didn't sparkle, they didn't sip blood from crystal goblets and moonlit castles. No, these creatures screeched in the dark, snuck into your home while you slept, and fed on babies. That's not poetic exaggeration, that's the original myth, and it's far more disturbing than fiction. Today we're traveling back, way back, before Bram Stoker, before medieval superstition, before crucifixes had power, back to ancient Greece, where some of the earliest known vampire-like demons were born. They didn't wear black cloaks, but they had fangs. They didn't live forever, but they wouldn't die. And they didn't call themselves vampires, but they sure acted like them. You'll meet Lamia, the grief-stricken queen turned child-eating terror. You'll encounter Empusa, the shape-shifting seductress who drains men dry, literally. And you'll hear of the Striges, ravenous owl women who stalk the night skies in search of blood. But this isn't just a history lesson. This is a mirror. Because while the names and masks have changed, these monsters never really went away. The fears they represent of death, desire, betrayal, punishment are still very much alive. So stay with me until the end. Because if you think vampires started in Transylvania, you're about to have your blood drained by truth. It always starts with a woman, doesn't it? Beautiful, cursed, wronged. Meet Lamia, once the queen of Libya, beloved by gods, doomed by jealousy. She had the misfortune of catching Zeus's attention, which, if you know your Greek myths, is basically a one-way ticket to disaster. Hera, Zeus's wife, and the goddess of revenge. Let's be honest, she had every reason to be, didn't take it well, she never does. And instead of punishing her cheating husband, who by now had probably seduced every kingdom south of Olympus, she went after Lamia, not with thunder or lightning, but with a curse. Hera took Lamia's children, slaughtered them, then twisted the blade deeper. She made it so Lamia could never sleep again, never close her eyes, forced to relive their deaths over and over for eternity. And then, something in Lamia snapped. Grief gave way to rage. Sanity dissolved into hunger. She became something else, something monstrous. No longer a mother, no longer human, but a predator. She began to stalk other people's children, not out of malice, out of madness. She devoured them, drank their blood. She tore open cribs in the middle of the night, hunting infants as if they could somehow replace the ones she lost. Her story spread across the Mediterranean, whispered warnings in candlelit nurseries. Go to sleep, or Lamia will come for you. Yes, this was the bedtime story in ancient Greece. But Lamia didn't just hunt children. Sometimes she seduced grown men, drew them in with beauty, only to consume them entirely. A warning perhaps about temptation, or about the price of power, when wielded by the wrong hands. She was described in conflicting ways. A serpent from the waist down, a woman from the chest up, eyes wide open with sorrow, lips red with blood. Aristotle mentioned her, so did Philostratus. Some said she was a literal monster, others said she was a metaphor. But everyone agreed on one thing: she drank blood. She was terrifying, not because she was alien, but because she was familiar. A grieving woman, a mother, a lover, a victim, and a villain. Sound familiar? That's the genius and horror of the myth. Lamia wasn't a distant beast in a faraway land. She was something you could almost understand, which made her even more dangerous. And yet, she was only the beginning, because ancient Greece had no shortage of nightmares. And the next one? She didn't just kill, she played with her food. If Lamia was born from grief, Empusa was born from appetite. Not sorrow, not revenge, just hunger.
She didn't cry over dead children. She didn't mourn lost love. Empusa was on the prowl, and proud of it. She didn't come at night to snatch babies. She came for men, and she knew exactly what she was doing. According to myth, Empusa was a servant of Hecate, goddess of witchcraft, ghosts, and all things that go bump in the night. A creature of shadows, a seductress of travelers, and a shapeshifter of legendary cruelty. Imagine walking alone on a dusty road under the moonlight. You're tired, you're thirsty, you haven't seen another soul for hours, and then you see her, beautiful, alone, smiling. She asks if you'd like company for the night. You say yes, of course you say yes, and by morning you're dead, drained, torn apart, eaten, your body left in pieces, your soul possibly cursed. That's Empusa. The ancients said she could change her shape at will. One moment, a stunning woman. The next, a hybrid monster, with one leg made of bronze, and the other of a donkey. Yes, a donkey. Don't ask. Even the Greeks had their weird phases. Some versions say she would laugh before killing. Others say she'd whisper sweet nothings until you fell asleep, and then chew your throat out. Empusa wasn't subtle. She wasn't shy, and unlike Lamia, she didn't need a tragic backstory to justify her evil. She just enjoyed it. She embodied every fear the ancient Greeks had about female sexuality, especially when it came without shame, without rules, God forbid, without male control. Because Empusa didn't wait to be chosen. She chose, and then she destroyed. In fact, some stories claim she didn't even exist in a physical form unless she was feeding. A walking hunger, a living mirage, a thirst wearing a smile. And the men she hunted, they were almost always alone, far from home, vulnerable, arrogant, perfect prey. But here's where it gets even darker. The philosopher Striges wrote about Empusa in the life of Apollonius of Tyana. In it, Apollonius confronts a beautiful woman at a banquet, a woman his followers are clearly enchanted by. Apollonius sees through her glamour. He declares her an Empusa. She shrieks, vanishes in a flash of flame, and leaves behind no trace. What's the lesson? That beauty is dangerous, that desire is deadly, that even the most learned men, philosophers, sages, heroes, can fall prey to illusions. Empusa wasn't just a monster. She was a metaphor wrapped in teeth and curves, a nightmare built for men who feared being devoured, literally or figuratively, by the women they couldn't control. You see it everywhere. The deadly siren, the femme fatale, the woman who lures you in and ruins your life, or ends it. That's Empusa's legacy. She wasn't tragic like Lamia. She wasn't pitied. She wasn't mourned. She was feared, and strangely, respected, because even gods didn't mess with her. And unlike vampires of later centuries, Empusa didn't linger. She struck, she fed, she vanished. She didn't sparkle in the sun, she burned in fire. She didn't need a castle, just a road, a man, and a moment. And just like that, you were gone. Empusa is the kind of monster we pretend doesn't exist anymore. Too old, too wild, too openly terrifying. We've repackaged her, of course. We made her prettier, gave her soft lighting, let her fall in love. But underneath it all, the hunger's still there. We just gave it lipstick and a love theme, and we're still afraid of her, because she reminds us that not every predator growls. Some whisper. If Lamia was grief and Empusa was desire, then the Striges were pure, unapologetic horror. No seduction, no tragedy, no philosophy, just hunger and wings. The Striges were among the oldest and the simplest. They didn't take the form of beautiful women. They didn't whisper sweet lies or hide behind illusions. They were what you saw and what you feared. Twisted bird women, clawed, feathered, bloodthirsty, sometimes described as giant owls with human faces, sometimes as hags with wings, but always as predators of the dark. They flew over rooftops in silence, perched above cradles, and waited for a baby's breath to falter, waited for a mother's head to nod, and then struck. The Striges fed on children, not metaphorically, not romantically, literally. They drank blood, tore flesh, stole life. The Romans feared them too. They believed these creatures would slip through windows and suck the life out of infants. Yes, the same Romans who gave us roads, aqueducts, and Caesar salads also believed in demon owls that guzzled baby blood. In fact, the word strix in Latin eventually gave rise to terms like strixology, the study of witches, because over time, Striges weren't just seen as monsters. They became associated with witchcraft, curses, and all things female and terrifying. Do you see the pattern? Woman plus autonomy plus appetite equals sign monster. The Striges didn't need a reason. They didn't need seduction. They were primal, relentless, a living fear of the night, dressed in feathers and screams. They were blamed for sickness, for stillbirths, for unexplained deaths in the night. Unlike the other creatures we've met, they couldn't be reasoned with. You couldn't outsmart them. You could only try to keep them out. So people hung garlic, painted symbols, whispered prayers. Some even left offerings, meat, blood, wine, anything to keep the winged demons satisfied. Because once they wanted you, you were already gone. So, let's retrace our steps. We began with Lamia, a grieving queen who lost her children and became the very thing she feared, a monster born from loss, feeding on innocence because hers was stolen. Then came Empusa, the shape-shifting temptress who hunted travelers with charm and claws, not born of pain, but of power, not mourning, but mocking. And finally, the Striges, demons of the sky, mindless, winged, the embodiment of nocturnal terror, feeding not on lust or sorrow, but on blood and silence. 3 monsters, 3 myths, and somehow, 3 reflections of us. Because vampires, real or imagined, have never just been about blood, they've always been about fear. Fear of death, fear of women, fear of the dark, fear of losing control. Every culture has its own version, and yet the pattern repeats, again and again. We dressed these fears in myth, gave them names, gave them fangs, and then we invited them into our stories, into our bedrooms, into our dreams. And we still do. Because vampires change with time, but the hunger never leaves. So the next time someone tells you vampires are just a European invention, smile and tell them they're wrong. Tell them about the child-eating queen of Libya, about the bronze-legged seductress with donkey feet, about the owl-faced nightmares who flew through Roman skies. Tell them vampires didn't begin with castles and cloaks. They began with grief, with lust, with fear. And that makes them immortal. If this story made you shiver, even a little, go ahead and like this video. Subscribe if you want more nightmares wrapped in history. And ring the bell, so you never miss a myth that can bite back.